What's poppin' peaches? What's poppin' peaches? What's poppin' peaches? How are you guys today? How are you guys today? I hope everybody's doing well. I am back with the second part of my Learning Java tutorial series, and today we are going to talk about variables in Java. We are going to start with the most basic variables, to which there are 5. So let me go ahead and list out the 5 names here. So you can have int, char, double, string, and what's the last one? Oh, Boolean. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one of these and how to define them and how you define variables in Java in general. So let's get started. So for variables in general in Java, the way that you define them is you need to say the type of variable that you are using. So let's go with the first one. We don't know what this is yet, but let's say we're going to use an int. So we would type int, which is the type of the variable. Then we hit space, and then we would say the name that we are giving to our variable. So think about in algebra, x could be anything, right? It could be any name, but you just choose to have it in x. So it's the same concept here. We can name it whatever we want. To kind of bridge a familiarity with algebra, let's go with x. And then after we name the variable, we need to set it equal to something. So now I'm going to tell you what int means. Int in Java means integer. So it's basically any integer number, and if you aren't familiar with what an integer is, it is any whole number from negative infinity to infinity, including 0. So in Java, I don't know the exact range, it's pretty big. An integer does not store all of the values from negative infinity to infinity, but it stores a lot. But for right now, we're not going to worry about that. Let's just set it equal to 1. So now, this is how we define a variable in Java. And if we go here, let's copy and paste this. And let's print out our variable. So to print out a variable in Java, all you have to do is put the variable's name inside of the print statement, which we learned last time. Okay, so let's run this program and see what happens. Let me move this. Alright. So we're going to, let's just run it right here. Alright, run. So here we go. We get the value of 1, which is the value that we stored in here. Okay, so as you can see, it works. Another thing, since it's a variable, you can change the value of the variable. And the way you would do that is you would say x. You don't need to put int anymore because you've already defined what it is, and you'd set it equal to another number. So let's say we want it to be equal to 2 now. Okay. So we have it equal to 2 now, and now let's rerun and see what happens. So as you can see, we get 2 now, which is perfect. So as you can see, we can create a variable and we can change it. Now really this concept is similar for every other of these 5 types of variables up here. So what we want to do, we're just going to go through each one and describe what it is and give an example. Okay, so we already know int, that is an integer. Now, let's see what a char is. So a char, let's name it C. A char in Java is a single character. Now it can be anything. It could be A, it could be B, it could be a space. It could be anything that you want. And now, so it could be a parentheses even. Well, it could be a single parentheses because it can only be one character or a number. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now in Java, to make sure that you know exactly what the character is, we put the character in between these two quotation marks. Okay. So we just type our character inside of here. So let's say we wanted the character C. As you can see, this works now. This is giving me a little error because it doesn't know what X is because I erased that line. So let's put C here and let's see what we get. Ah, there we go. So we got C printed out. So a character can also be a number. So let's run this again. See, so it's really just one of anything. Let's put a parentheses in here and show you that. After that, I think you'll get the gist of it. Alright, you see. So, a character can really be anything, but it is limited to one character. Basically, just think of the characters on your keyboard. Okay, so next up, we have a double. Now, a double is also a representation of a number, except it can represent a whole number or a decimal number. So let's say double D. Okay, let's not say double D. That's okay. That sounds a little weird. Let's say double X again equals. So before with an integer, let me just show you that really quick. Int X equals 3.5. As you can see, it's giving me an error here because we cannot have a decimal. So let's try and run this and show you the error. So it says exception, which just means an error. In thread main, which just means that's the method that I'm running right here. It says unresolved compilation problem. Type mismatch cannot convert from double to int. So it's saying this is a double, 3.5, and it can't convert it to an int. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to change this to a double to make it work. So if you ever need to represent a decimal number in your code, you need to use a double. Okay, so let's run this again and see what happens. Wait, actually, we gotta put the X in here so it prints out. Okay, now let's run it. There we go. So we got 3.5. And a lot of people are always confused about this. You can have a double be a whole number, but doubles, it's better to use an integer for a whole number because doubles can't represent numbers as closely as you would think. I don't think a double can represent 0 very well. It would be tough to, maybe I'll get into the specifics of how a double is represented in a computer versus how an integer is represented, but just know for now, you don't really need to know all of that. Just know that integers, if you have a whole number, store it in an integer. If you have a decimal number, store it in a double. Okay, alright, let's move on to the next one. how this is red right here. That's showing that it is a primitive type, which means that it is not a class. Now I know this makes zero sense to you guys who are new to Java, but just know, for right now, these are all primitive types, meaning that they are not a class, they are not an object. Okay, we'll explain more about that in future videos, but as you can see, if I type in anything but string, int, it turns red. Char, it turns red. Boolean, red. Double, red, okay? But if I type in string, it does not turn red. And there's a reason for that. But these are just the common things that you're going to use. You don't need to worry about objects yet. Strings are very easy to learn. Okay, but let's do Boolean first. Okay, so Boolean, let's name it D. So Booleans are going to be your true false values. These values can only either be true or false. So, whoops, can't spell. It can either be true, like this, and let's print that out. True. Or it can be false. Alright, but for a Boolean, printing out is not going to be the main function of this variable here. The main function of it is for other things, such as if statements, and other things that we will talk about in later videos. But mainly, you'd want to use Booleans for if you are checking to see if something in your code is true or false. You're not normally going to be using it to print. I mean, you can use, that's probably the only one you wouldn't print in any situation, really. I mean, you could, but it's not very useful. The other ones have other uses other than just printing out to the console. But this one really has no use. Booleans don't really have any use being printed, but just know that they store true and false values for now. They become much more useful later on. Okay, now let's do string. Let's name it S. And once again, don't worry about it being a little different. It's still super easy to use. So string is similar to a character. With a character, you use this notation and then put one character inside of it. But with a string, we use a double quotes, and we can type whatever we want inside of it, and that will be the string. So let's make a little modification to our hello world program. Say we didn't want to type hello world like that. Say we wanted to store the value of hello world inside of the string and then print it out. So we could do that because strings hold sequences of characters and or words. So we could just type hello world in between these double quotes, and it would work exactly the same. So let's try this. There we have it. So that is basically the function of a string. It holds a sequence of characters. So it's very good for if you want to verbally express something, and for many other things. It has a large amount of uses in Java and in every language, really. Okay, so those are the basic types that you would need to know. So let's see. Let's print a few of them together. You can define as many variables as you want in Java. It really does not matter. So let's define an integer. So remember, the three parts, they are the same for every variable that you define. You have the type. In this case, it's an int. We'll say int x, or no, let's say int I. Let's say it equals 30. And then we'll have double D equals, let's go 4.68. And remember, always end your codes with a semicolon. That's important. End each line with the semicolon that you're doing here. Okay, and what's the next one? Char C equals, remember, single quotes for char. Well, let's see. And then Boolean B, set that to true. And then string S, let's go str equals, and yeah, just saying you can name a variable as long as you want. It does not matter. There are a few rules though. You cannot start off a variable with a number. That's wrong. You can only start it off with, I think, an underscore or a $sign or any letter or capital letter. Okay, so you can't start it off with a number or a random symbol. Okay, so let's just name it str. Okay, and we'll store this is a string. Okay, now let's go system.out.println to print to the console, and we will go I. Now, if you want to print multiple variables, you need to put them together, so we will say plus D plus C plus B plus str. Now, as you can see here, now there is a problem here. That is because these were all primitive types, and this is an object. More importantly, it's a string. Whenever you have a string, you need to change this around a little bit. You can't just print regular variables in there. So let's just leave that out for now. Oh, let's see, there's still an error. Oh, whoops, my bad. I'm sorry. It's because of the Boolean. So we can't, that's what I'm saying. You can't really print out a Boolean like that. I'm sorry. My bad. I think you can still print str. Yeah. You can only really print a Boolean on its own or something like that, because it's not really meant to be printed out. Because this true right here, it may be letters, but it's not a string like this, so it can't go easily in here. And it's also not a number or a character like these are. Okay, it's something else entirely, so it's tough to put it inside of here. You'd be better off just saying, if this is true, then print the string true down here. But that's probably for a different video. I know I keep saying that. There's so much that you guys need to learn, but we're just focusing on the basics here. So let's run this and see what happens. It's gonna look a little weird. Everything's gonna be smushed together. Just a warning. Okay, you see, so we got the, wait, why is there a 1? Oh, whoops, it added it. My bad. So, without having another string in here, it's actually just going to add all of these characters together. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to add a string like this, and then the plus instead of addition. It will become just adding it to the list of stuff you're printing out. So instead of adding this together, look what's going to happen now. Now it's just going to print each variable. See, we got the 30, we got the 4.68, the Z, and the this is a string. Don't worry about this stuff too much. I feel like this isn't making too much sense. I'm sorry about that. But it's not really that important. What I do hope that you got, that you understood was what each of these variables, variable types do. So let's just recap before we go here. Int represents an integer, a whole number that can include 0 and goes from a very large whole number to a very small whole number. I don't remember the exact range, but it does have a range. You can't just put infinity in there or the biggest number you can think of and expect that int will hold it, because it won't. So be careful about that, but I doubt any of you guys are going to be dealing with numbers that big. Double is the same thing. It doesn't go all the way from negative infinity to infinity, but it does go very big as well. And this expresses decimal values. Okay, if you have a whole number, use an integer, not a double. If you have a decimal number, you have to use a double, or else it won't work. Characters are used to express a single character. It doesn't have to be a letter. It can be a number, or it could be a symbol. It does not matter. Okay. So let's just put this back to how it was. A Boolean represents a true or false value. These are very important. We'll learn about them more later. Every one of these is important, but these ones you haven't even really seen much, so you'll learn a lot more about these later on in the course. This represents, a string represents a, sorry, I'm trying not to use the word in the definition. A string represents a sequence of characters, such as a word or a sentence. Yeah, and you'll likely use this for printing out stuff and for many other things. So yeah, I hope you guys got something out of this. I don't know what the next lesson will be, but I will think of something. I'm going to try and cover all of the fundamentals. We'll talk about all of these keywords here as well, so do not worry. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you're a little relaxed and that you learned something. Let's get some good vibes. Good vibes, good vibes, good vibes, good vibes, good vibes, good vibes. Good vibes, good vibes, good vibes. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Like I said, I hope you learned something. I know a lot of you guys probably don't like these videos, but I like making them, and I want to try and educate those who want to be educated on this. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.